Hey everyone, I'm Meoang, and this is my beginner's guide to Friday the 13th, the game. Friday the 13th is an asymmetric multiplayer survival horror game based on the film franchise, developed by Ilphonic and Gun Media. This guide will be split into several sections, all of which will have timestamp links in the description below. This is a lobby-based game with dedicated servers where each game has up to 8 players. 7 of those players play as camp counselors, while the remaining player plays as Jason himself. The objective for the counselors is to work together and find a way to escape the map, while the objective for Jason is to stop them from escaping and kill as many counselors as possible. Each game, the player who will play as Jason is random, but the game does include an option to select a preference. If you choose to prefer counselors, you will almost never play as Jason, but if you prefer to play as Jason, you will have a slightly higher chance of being Jason over players who did not make that preference. There are currently 3 maps that include a variety of methods for the counselors to escape. All of these escape methods require the counselors to collect 1 or more items and make repairs to various objects on the map. First, we'll go over the game's progression system. Players earn experience for playing matches and completing certain objectives while playing those matches. As players gain experience points, they level up and unlock access to new characters and cosmetics for counselors. Additionally, players earn customization points for playing the game, and these customization points can be spent on unlocking new kill moves for Jason or new perks for counselors. Kill moves are more or less just for fun, since by default you start with all of the situationally necessary kill moves. Perks, however, do have some impact on gameplay for counselors, and unlocking them will help you survive. Perks are generated randomly each time you decide to unlock one. First, the effect of the perk is chosen, then the positive effect of the perk, and then the negative effect of the perk. Depending on the randomly generated rarity of the perk created, these effects can vary greatly. For example, this perk allows a counselor to start with a map and gives a small increase to fear resistance, but also includes a small drawback. If you get a perk that you have no interest in for whatever reason, you can sell it back to get an amount of customization points that depends on the rarity of that perk. You can choose up to 3 perks for each counselor, and unlocked perks are available for every counselor you have, which means that deciding to unlock a perk is not that much of a commitment to any character or playstyle. In general, these perks are personal preference, but they should also be catered towards the strength of each counselor. There are a variety of counselors to choose from, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. As long as you have a counselor unlocked by leveling up, you can play any counselor you want each match, but you cannot change counselors mid-game, with one notable exception. Each counselor has a few stats to consider when deciding who to play. Composure reduces the rate that the counselor develops fear and decides how easy it is to escape Jason's grasp. Luck increases weapon durability and gives other small increases to other stats. Repair decides how quickly you can make repairs and how many quick time events you will have to complete when making those repairs. Speed decides the counselor's top speed when sprinting. Stamina decides how much stamina a counselor can have at maximum and the rate that it is consumed by actions such as jogging and sprinting. Stealth reduces the amount of noise a counselor makes and decides how easy it is for Jason to sense the counselor. And lastly, Strength decides the effectiveness of weapons and reduces the amount of stamina used when performing combat actions. Depending on how you want to play the game, choose a counselor that has strengths that interest you. For example, I enjoy being stealthy, making quick repairs, and managing my fear, so I choose to play as AJ Mason for most games. Many of the counselor actions require the use of stamina, so we'll go over that first. Your stamina is represented by the red bar underneath the minimap. It slowly regenerates while walking, and quickly regenerates while standing still. By pressing X on PC, your counselor can begin to jog, which uses a small amount of stamina as you move, but makes your character move at a higher speed without creating too much noise. By holding Shift on PC, your counselor breaks into a sprint, which greatly increases your speed, but creates a lot of noise and uses up a lot of stamina, depending on your counselor's stats. By holding Control on PC, your counselor will crouch, which has similar stamina regeneration to walking, but you move a little slower. While crouched, a counselor makes the least amount of noise, and if your fear level is low, it may keep you hidden from Jason's sense. Lastly, anytime Jason is near you, the music in-game will change to be much more dramatic, and your counselor may start making more noises. When you have a weapon, your counselor will be able to engage in combat. You can attack while in normal stance, but if you are anticipating a fight, you can press C on PC to enter combat stance. While in combat stance, your counselor will strafe instead of walking normally. You can attack and block while in this stance, and if you double tap a direction, your counselor will jump in that direction to try and dodge. Projectile weapons can be used by holding right click on PC, aiming, and then hitting left click to fire. Any projectile that hits Jason will stun him for a short time. Depending on the weapon you have, your counselor's stats, and your counselor's perks, hitting Jason with weapons will eventually stun him for a short time. You can use your microphone to communicate with counselors near you. I recommend playing this game with a microphone if possible, because communicating with the other players will greatly increase the effectiveness of everyone. Around each map are several cabins that can be entered. If the door is unlocked, you can open it up and lock it behind you. A locked door cannot be opened by counselors or Jason, but Jason can break it down by hitting it for a short time. Additionally, windows can be opened up and used for counselors to enter and exit a cabin. If you're in a hurry, you can tap E on PC to jump through a window, but if it's not open yet, it will injure you. If a window is broken and you climb through it, it will also injure you. The main thing to do in cabins is to collect items. Search all of the drawers and on the ground for them. Also inside of cabins are some objectives, including the radio to contact Tommy and the phone to contact the police. Some rooms will also have hiding places that a counselor can use to try and hide from Jason, including beds and closets. If your character does not have a high stealth stat, it isn't very useful, but for more stealthy characters it can be a reliable way to avoid Jason for short times. The counselors have a variety of items available to them that are spawned randomly around the map. The smaller defensive and utility items are found in the drawers within cabins, while weapons and repair items are found laying around the map, mostly inside of cabins. Counselors can hold up to 3 of the smaller items found in drawers. These items can be dropped manually or when you die, so they can also be on the ground. These items are mostly used to survive, but there are a few exceptions. The map allows counselors to view the entire map at will, which reveals landmarks, objectives, and cabin locations, as well as revealing where the other counselors are on the map. This item does not take up a slot in your inventory. The walkie-talkie allows all players who have one to communicate with each other using voice communication. This item is incredibly helpful for coordinating the group and should be taken advantage of when possible. This item also does not take up a slot in your inventory. The next few defensive items will all take up a slot in your inventory. Again, you can hold up to 3 of them and you can have duplicates. Each of these items can only be used once unless a chosen perk states otherwise. The first aid spray is used to heal up some damage on the counselor and takes a short time to apply. The firecrackers can be used to create some noise to distract Jason. If the firecrackers go off directly on Jason, he will be stunned for a short time. Lastly, the pocket knife will allow you to instantly escape Jason's grasp, which will also stun him for a short time. All weapons are held in the counselor's hands, meaning that they do not take up an inventory slot, but only one item can be held this way at a time. Melee weapons can be swung at Jason to stun him, depending on the strength of the weapon, your counselor's strength stat, and the chosen perks. These weapons will eventually break, but some weapons are more durable than others. In general, the baseball bat, the wrench, and the machete are the most effective. There are also 2 projectile weapons that can be found, and these weapons can only be used once. The flare gun shoots out a flare that can be used to distract Jason or mark a location. If the flare directly hits Jason, he will be stunned. The gun can be used to shoot Jason, which stuns him for a reasonably long time, but if it hits another counselor, that counselor will be killed and you will lose some experience points for that game. The last weapon is a bear trap that can be picked up and set up anywhere on the floor. If Jason steps into it, it will stun him for a while, but it's worth mentioning that if a counselor steps into it, they will also be injured and stunned for a while. The items used to make repairs will often be the ones you're the most excited to see. The held repair items are found on the ground at various locations on the map, and the inventory items take up an inventory slot and are all found inside of drawers in buildings. There are 2 repair items that take up a slot in your inventory. The fuse is used to repair a fuse box outside of a cabin that has a phone that can be used to contact the police. The keys are used to start up a car that has already been repaired. The remaining repair items are held by counselors, meaning that they do not take up a slot in your inventory, but you cannot hold one of these items and a weapon at the same time. The battery is one of the items needed to repair a car. The gas is one of the items needed to repair a car or a boat. Lastly, the propeller is one of the items needed to repair the boat. To make a repair, an appropriate item can be taken to one of the objects that needs repairing. Repairing an object will take some time depending on the repair stat of your counselor and will also require passing some relatively easy QuickTime events. Once an object is fully repaired, it can be used. Ultimately, though, your goal as the counselor is to escape the map. This can be done in one of several ways depending on the map you are playing on. First, if 20 minutes pass in the game, all surviving counselors will automatically escape. If the fuse box is repaired and the police are contacted, the police will arrive after 5 minutes. Any counselor who reaches the police will escape. On top of that, if Jason is near the police, he will be shot and stunned. If the car is repaired, counselors can manually drive the car to an exit. If the car crashes, it will have to be started up again by the driver. If Jason blocks the car, it will crash into him and also have to be started up again by the driver. On maps with 2 cars, one of the cars will have room for 4 counselors, and the other will have room for 2 counselors. On maps with 1 car, the car will always have room for 4 counselors. Lastly, if the boat is repaired, it can be driven out of the map similarly to the car. The water exit will always have 2 red markers that you have to drive in between. The boat has room for 2 counselors. One remaining objective is a radio that can be used to contact Tommy Jarvis. This objective does not directly allow counselors to escape, but it is usually helpful to the escape effort in general. After he is called, one of the players who has been killed or has escaped will return as Tommy. Tommy has perfect stats and starts with a map, a radio, and a gun. Getting injured in the ways mentioned before, or getting hit by Jason or other counselors, will injure you. As you get injured, your counselor will move slower and build up some fear. Eventually, if you're injured enough, you will die. In this game, counselors build up fear that inhibits them in a few ways. Fear is built up by being alone, being in the dark, seeing a corpse, seeing Jason, being chased by Jason, being hurt by Jason, witnessing Jason kill someone, or Jason damaging a building that you're inside of. The amount of fear that you get from these things depends on your counselor's composure stat and your chosen perks. To get rid of fear, you can stay with other counselors, stay in the light, complete objectives, hide, or damage Jason. Fear affects your counselor in a variety of ways, and they are amplified by how afraid you are. The most notable effect of fear is that Jason will be able to sense you easier, even from across the map if you are afraid enough. Additionally, fear reduces stamina regeneration, blurs out your screen, hides the minimap, makes your counselor stumble occasionally, and makes your counselor much louder. Now that you understand how to play as a counselor, I will go over how to play as Jason. Your goal as Jason is to prevent counselors from escaping. You can try to interfere with their attempts to complete objectives, and you can kill them directly when possible. There are several different Jasons available, and you can choose which one to play as long as you have that Jason unlocked by leveling up. Every Jason has access to the same abilities, but some Jasons are better at certain abilities than others, and some Jasons start with more items than the others. The most notable ability difference is that some Jasons can run much faster than the others, and the slower Jasons barely move faster than a jog. Additionally, each Jason uses a different weapon. These weapons don't make a huge difference, but some of them are easier for certain things, like breaking windows. Jason has 8 abilities if you include his grab and melee attacks. First is the melee attack I just mentioned. Depending on the weapon your Jason uses, he will swing his weapon and hit counselors in melee range. This will injure them and increase their fear. In most situations, you will want to go for a grab instead, but it can be appropriate to use your melee weapon if you can't quite reach them for a grab or want to hit them through a window. Next is the grab I mentioned. You will reach out and grab a counselor in melee range. After a short time, you will be able to instantly kill that counselor, depending on available space and your chosen kill moves. The counselor will eventually struggle away from you, and will instantly struggle away from you if they have a pocket knife. If you are stunned by a counselor while holding another counselor, you will drop that counselor. If a counselor escapes your grasp in any way, you will be stunned for a short time. It's worth noting, though, that if you begin a kill animation, Jason becomes immune to all damage and you cannot be stopped. The next 2 abilities use up items that Jason has. Some Jasons start with these items and other Jasons don't. The throwing knives are projectile weapons that Jason can aim and throw. If a knife hits a counselor, they will be damaged. If they are damaged enough, a counselor can be killed by a throwing knife. Throwing knives can be found around the map stuck into posts and buildings, so keep an eye out for them. Jason also has traps that he can set around the map. These traps are visible to counselors, but can be hard to see at times. If a counselor steps into one of Jason's traps, they will be injured and stunned for a short time. Additionally, when a counselor is in a trap, Jason will be able to see them across the map if he has his sensibility. Traps cannot be picked back up, and there is no way to get more of them. This means that if your chosen Jason does not start with traps, he cannot use them at all. The remaining 4 abilities are unlocked over time as the game progresses, and can be used multiple times after a cooldown. The Morph ability allows Jason to choose any point on the map and instantly teleport there. This is useful to quickly move to objectives or to reach an area that you know has counselors. The Sense ability allows Jason to detect counselors near him. The range of the sense depends on how afraid the counselor is. If a counselor is inside of a building, the entire building will glow when Jason is sensing. The Shift ability allows Jason to become invisible, move at a very high speed, and then reappear at will when the ability runs out. This is how Jason closes distance with counselors, since even the fastest Jasons do not move that quickly. Most notably, Jason can use this ability to catch up to a counselor and instantly grab them if the player times it right. The last ability is Stalk, which makes it so counselors cannot detect Jason by music cues or the minimap. On top of that, while stalking, Jason will be able to hear counselors easier. There's one last ability Jason has, but it's not active. After most of the game has passed, Jason will enter a Rage. While enraged, all of Jason's abilities are more effective and have shorter cooldowns. On top of that, Jason will now be able to break down doors instantly by walking through them. The main way that you find counselors is by constant use of the Sense ability mentioned earlier. On top of that, counselors making noise relatively near you will be revealed by small moving circles, which can give you a good idea of where to go next. Jason can interact with cabins and objectives to interfere with counselor progress. The most obvious ways that Jason can interact with cabins are by breaking the windows and the doors. If a door is locked, Jason will have to break it down by holding left click on PC. This takes a short while, so most counselors will hide or jump through a window while you are breaking down the door. So take a second to figure out what they did after you broke the door down. Some cabins have several walls inside of them that can also be broken down like doors. Additionally, Jason can break the windows of the cabin. Broken windows can still be used by counselors to escape the cabin, but it will injure them. Lastly, Jason can damage the generator of a cabin, which turns off all of the lights inside of it and makes the counselors inside build some fear. If counselors have started up a car or boat, Jason can still stop them. If he collides with the car, it will stop and have to be started up again. Use this time to pull counselors out of the car and kill them as needed. If Jason finds a boat being driven, he can move underneath it to tip it over. The boat will have to be started up again, so use this time to drown counselors who are knocked out of the boat. And with that information, you have everything you need to know to start playing Friday the 13th. It's an awesome game that I've had a lot of fun with so far, and I recommend it to everyone who is looking for a fun multiplayer game that's a little different, particularly if you have friends to play with. It's worth mentioning that there is a way to kill Jason, but I'll go over that in a future video since it's extremely specific and situational. If you like this tutorial, consider subscribing. I have more Friday the 13th content planned, and I also do tutorials for other games. Thanks for watching, guys, and good luck with the game.